You're listening to Advocast, the adult education podcast, sponsored by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. And now, here are your hosts, Erin, Vobornik, and Sara, Haghighi.
Welcome to Coalition on Adult Basic Education's Adult Ed Advocast, the podcast that helps you become a more effective advocate for adult education. I'm Sara Haghighi, Refugee Education Program Coordinator at Pima Community College and the 2021 Arizona State Advocate for Adult Education Fellow. I introduce myself as a passionate educator who believes in empowering students and raising their critical consciousness about social conditions. And my co-host is Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Vobornik, the 2021 State Advocate for Adult Education Fellow from Illinois, an ESL instructor at Elgin Community College, and a board member of Illinois' Adult and Continuing Educators Association. So we have a great show for you today, all about adult education funding. And if you think funding can't be fun, just wait. So we'll chat with Laurie Kierstead-Joseph, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Adult Basic Education for College and Career at Pima Community College, and Ana Chavarin, a former GED student and full-time community organizer with Pima County Interfaith Council. So things have been pretty busy over here in Illinois. So we've had like conferences and advocacy events on top of teaching, because I'm a teacher, and it's just been really hectic this month. How have things been with you, Sara?
Erin, things have been busy here too. So, and especially today, we're doing a progress assessment tonight, and students are walking behind the door, knocking on the door. If you hear some knockings, it's my student. They want to see how they did in the test and all these details. But regardless of that, things have been busy here too. So as you know, I oversee a refugee education program, and things with refugees here is on the topic. And we've been registering a lot of Afghan students, and those are the ones that they recently arrived to the United States, and they've been resettled here in Pima County. And I just want to point out that Laurie and Ana, both of them, are from the same city that I live in. And actually, Laurie and I work together. She's the boss of my boss. And Ana was a former student in our college. So we are very excited.
That's amazing. Arizona is representing today on the Advocast. The Arizona Advocast. I'm really excited to talk to Laurie today, and she's actually one of the big reasons that I actually applied for the COABE State Advocate for Adult Education Fellowship.
Really?
And she probably doesn't know this because I've never actually met her or spoken to her. So having a bit of a fangirl moment right here. But she did a webinar through COABE early on in 2021. And she had mentioned at some point during it, and it was such a brief moment, but it had such a big impact on me, that she doesn't describe herself as like the most outgoing person. And as an introvert, I heard all of her accomplishments, everything that she does. And I thought, wow, like in my mind, I thought advocacy means you need to be like a big personality. You need to like walk up to people and schmooze. And that's not my style. And so when I heard that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. Like it's something I'm passionate about, but I was really doubting myself. And so that like brief blip in that webinar gave me the courage to apply for the fellowship. And here we are.
Oh my God. That's that I always say when I grow up, I want to be Laurie. And Ana too. And it's interesting because I know these people from my college, and I always wanted to be a good friend with Ana. She is very busy doing her advocacy work, so I don't see her a lot. But every time I'm like, Ana, can we go for a coffee? Can we be best friends? That's very exciting. I'm very excited to have both of them here tonight.
I am too. And I know our listeners are excited too, but we're going to make you wait a minute. So we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to do Hot on the Hill.
You're listening to Advocast, the Adult Education Podcast. And now, it's time for What's Hot on the Hill with Erin and Sara. Take it away.
Congress has worked hard to finish a final version of the fiscal year 2022 appropriation bill, which provides funding to WIOA Title II, the annual funding mechanism through which adult education receives federal dollars. Lawmakers in Washington have been working to pass a funding bill for the rest of federal fiscal year. COAPE has been urging Congress to include an increase of $135 million for adult education so programs can expand classroom space, recruit and retain more full-time teaching models, and invest in effective in-demand programs such as Integrated Education and Training, IET. Thank you to whoever contacted their senators and representatives to urge them to include an increase of $135 million for the Adult Education State Grants Program.
So advocacy never ends, does it, Sara?
No, it does not.
It doesn't. And in fact, while you were doing that, I actually filled out the 3-click. I was paying attention. I totally was. But I also filled out the 3-click while you were talking. So if you're someone who feels like, I don't really want to go to the Hill or make a phone call, but I do want to do something on behalf of this field, you can do the COABE 3-click tool, access it from a computer or a phone. You know, if you're listening to this Advocast, I know you've got a device nearby. You can find it on the COABE website. I always go through my email and just find it in the most recent COABE connection because sometimes I forget how many times I've filled it out. I'm sure my legislators are like, Erin, you send this to us every week. It doesn't take long. So even in a busy schedule, you can find 30 seconds to complete.
You know what I do? I usually do that when I'm waiting for my food to warm up in the microwave. So that's how fast it is.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, you're not cooking like a big turkey dinner in your microwave.
No. I usually meal prep. So when I come to work or when I go home, I have my food ready. So I just need to put it in a microwave. And when I'm waiting for my food to warm up, I just do the 3 clicks, and that's very easy and fast.
Yeah, the Advocast fully supports that. Listen to us while you're doing food prep. Do the 3 clicks while you're reheating it. You'll be fed, and you'll learn about advocacy. What's better than that? So we know what's hot on the Hill, but if you want to see someone who sizzles with advocacy, you definitely want to check out our first guest. So with us today is Laurie Kierstead-Joseph. So thank you, Laurie, so much for joining us today.
Hi, Laurie.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. What an honor, and wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much.
We are both fangirling right now.
We are. Well, Sara, and you see her all the time.
Well,
that's true.
Well, I'll tell you, when I grow up, I want to launch a podcast. I'm fangirling too, so I really appreciate the chance to be here.
I love that. Is there any adult who feels like they're actually an adult? Because I don't. So, Laurie, I did some research about, like your background and everything prior to the podcast, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, just tell our listeners a bit about yourself.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks again for having me here. My name is Laurie Kierstead-Joseph, and it's my honor that I get to serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Adult Basic Education for College and Career at Pima Community College. I also serve on the COA board as co-chair of the Workforce Development Committee, and I serve on my state association's awareness committee, so on the Arizona Association for Lifelong Learning Awareness Committee. So that's sort of what I do now, but I have to say that I'd love to talk about why I came to adult ed. I started in adult ed over 20 years ago. I sort of came in, like many do, sort of sideways. I was looking to do an independent study for my master's level work. I was studying language acquisition, and I spent a bunch of time in a classroom in an ESL class in one of our adult ed centers, and I fell in love. I fell in love with our students, with adult ed, with that amazing energy that you get when you sit in a classroom and work with learners who are motivated and grateful and really reaching for the skills they need for a better life. I couldn't leave. So I went from being an observer to a volunteer to a teacher to a coordinator to a manager. I just never left. And all along, I'm somebody who sees myself as a servant leader. I'm motivated to be here to use my voice and my role and my privilege to serve our community, our learners, and my colleagues as best as I can. So that's a little bit about how I got here.
That's why we like our Laurie. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Laurie. So there is this question that almost every single teacher asks me, and that is, what are some of the most common ways that adult education programs are funded? Where does the funding come from?
Yeah, so certainly programs like ours in the one that we have here at Pima Community College, we are funded in a few ways, right? So we get federal funding through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA's Title II, the Adult Ed and Family Literacy Act. So we get most of our funding from the federal level. There's also a required state match. So there's state funding that has to be put up so that we can draw down those federal dollars. And there's a required match of 3-to-1, 3 federal to 1 state. It's important to note, and we often like to remind our elected officials, that's a minimum, not a maximum. And so as you look across funding across different states, you'll see some states have a lot of money that they put in to support their adult learners, and some, like Arizona, have been putting in the bare minimum for a fair amount of time now. So it just depends state to state. So there's usually federal dollars and state dollars. And then certainly our funders at the state level also ask for local match or contributions so that our host organizations are helping to support our programs as well. It's important to note that adult ed lives in different spaces and in different organizations across the country. So in some states, adult ed sort of is a part of the community college system. And in other states, it's a part of the K-12 district or K-12 system. And in other states, it might be in the Department of Labor or at the state level. And so adult ed sort of shows up in different spaces, and that funding comes through those different pass-through organizations depending on the state. I'll say that even in Arizona, although at the state level, it comes through the K-12 system, the adult ed programs in the state, some are in community colleges, some are in school districts, some of them are in local workforce agencies, and some are in nonprofits. So it just sort of depends on your state and on your local situation, how those funds come in.
That's great. I think that's pretty similar to Illinois, but for For anybody listening who might say, oh, that's really interesting that like 3-1 in Arizona, how do you recommend people find that information out about their own states? What would be some good contacts to figure that out?
Well, I will say that the COABE website has really great data on the state fact sheets about how much funding goes to each state and how many learners are served and how big the need is in each state. So that's really helpful as an initial connection. But as we talk today about advocacy, I will say that the state adult ed office is willing to share and tell you how much funding they get and how that's going. They themselves are not allowed to advocate, but as individuals and certainly as part of our state and national organizations, we can speak up and say, hey, you know, I'm glad we get this much money, but boy, we could do a lot more if we got this much. And so I have found that state offices are quite willing to, in a matter of moments, answer an email about how much state funding they have or need.
That's great. Thank you.
That's wonderful to know. Laurie, could you please talk a little bit more about how an increase in funding would affect adult ed programs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. You know, it's really the need for adult ed is greater now, maybe than ever before, right? The family sustaining jobs and careers in our current and future workforce are going to require adults to have some training beyond high school. But we know that 51 million adults in the US have low literacy skills and 75 million adults have low numeracy skills, right? And just 1.5 million of those folks are enrolled with us in adult ed. There's this huge need. So at a minimum, if we could get an increase in adult ed funding, that would allow us to serve more of those millions of learners who really need to brush up on their basic skills, learn English, or get a high school equivalency diploma to even be able to access and succeed in some training or a new career. Additionally, I want to note that adult ed programs do more than just teach reading, writing, math, and English, right? I know, Erin, you're a teacher, and Sara, you and I have both been teachers. We do so much more than just the basic skills instruction. We support digital literacy skills development. We do a lot of employability and life skills and 21st century skill development. And we're even partnering with colleges and training institutions to offer integrated education and career training. So, you know, digital literacy training means we need adult ed programs to have computers that learners can access, that have up-to-date software and things like that. And those don't come cheap. And so we've got these teachers who do great work training learners in the skills they need, including digital literacy, but they may not always have access to the devices they need. So that's one area perhaps that additional funding could help. Mm-hmm. And then I just want to note on one other area I think of, and I talk a lot about when I'm doing advocacy work, is student supports, student services, and wraparound supports. What we know is that adult learners in adult ed, because it's what WIOA asks of us, our adult learners have multiple barriers to success. Mm-hmm. They may be struggling with some things in terms of housing or food insecurity. They may have not enough childcare or transportation support to allow them to come to class every single day. They might be struggling with other challenges around their health. And we know that we need to be able to help them troubleshoot when those things bubble up so that they can stay engaged with school. And so I think one of the big things that we need more funding for is those student services and navigators who can really support learners, build those relationships, and help them connect with the resources within your institution maybe, or within the community that are going to help them be successful in their studies.
That would be amazing. I feel like sometimes as a teacher in a program, I'm not just teacher, I'm counselor, I'm trying to connect them to local services, and it's hard. It's hard to do all the things and do them well, especially since my training is teaching. So having somebody there who could be that professional and really serve our students, but also serve our communities. Something I'm always surprised with when I talk to legislators is they're just shocked to hear everything that we cover in adult education, right? When people hear adult education, they equate it to GED. And it's so much more than that, as you just highlighted. So you touched on like how programs could use this funding, because we could really use this funding. But sometimes, even though to us it's really obvious that there's this need and there's this impact, talking to stakeholders and legislators about increased funding can sometimes be a tough sell. So what have you found to be one of the strongest arguments that you make on behalf of increased funding for adult ed?
Oh, that's a good question. Different arguments reach different people differently. So it's often good to go in with a few at the ready. So I think right now workforce development and skill development is on everybody's radar, and it's it's something that speaks to folks on both sides of the aisle, that folks really want to help employers, they want to help workers. And so I go in really drawing attention to what we hear every day in the news about the jobs that are out there that are going underfilled, the workforce of the future that's going to be really going to require folks to have career skills and career training. And so I really focus on that workforce piece. And then the other piece that I point out is I tend to share the data around, one, the fact that we're not having as many children as we used to in the US. So we talk a lot about sort of a birth dearth, and the reality that we are not going to be able to fill all of those jobs simply by graduating all of the learners in our K-12 schools right now, that we are only going to meet workforce demand by skilling and upskilling our adults who are already in the workforce, perhaps. But you and I know, and what I like to remind our legislators is there's a lot of those folks who lack some basic skills or lack a high school equivalency diploma. So I quoted earlier the number of folks who maybe need some math help or some reading help to get up to the skills they need to succeed in some training. But in Arizona, for example, alone, we have over 700,000 adults out there in the workforce who don't have a high school diploma yet. And we're actually seeing those numbers increase, unfortunately, as a result of the pandemic. And I think states they're seeing the very same thing all across the country. So really just drawing on that, if you want to meet workforce demand, if you want your employers to have the workers they need, and you want individuals to be able to support themselves and their families, you've got to invest in adult ed to help these learners get the skills they need to succeed in college and career. And then the other piece that's a really important piece to share is that it's really, it's kind of like a 2-for-1, or sometimes more than 2-for-1, because if you're upskilling that adult learner, then they're going to be better able, if they're parents, to support their children in their learning. Because we all know that the best predictor of a child's success in education is the education level of their parents. And so those two arguments I find to be really impactful.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Laurie. So in some states, the work is to build any awareness in adult ed. And in some states, some private companies want to take over the adult ed. How does advocacy vary from case to case or state to state?
Oh, that's such a great question, Sara. And it's such a great thing to keep in mind as an advocate, is to sort of get to know the landscape of what's happening in your state. We are seeing more and more competition in the adult ed space, private companies that are seeking public dollars to launch adult ed programs, or sometimes adult high school programs. And I'll tell you, the need is huge, right? I want adults to all have access to whatever learning they need to be successful, but we want to make sure that private organizations with lobbying teams don't cast a shadow over us, right? So that we don't get the funding to keep doing what we do so well in the adult ed system. And so I'll tell you, in my experience, there have been times in my past where what we've been doing is simply, as Sara said, trying to raise awareness. Like, hello, here's this thing. It's called adult ed. Have you heard of it? We really want you to know more about it because it's doing great work and we could use more funding to help more learners. And then I would say recently, in the last couple of years, it's been more about helping legislators understand what do we do that's the same or different from these private institutions that are reaching for public dollars. And so it's almost a little bit of a defensive advocacy strategy, and a like needling in to say, but wait, we do that. Don't say we don't do that, but we do that too, and we're doing it, for a bare minimum of funding, and we sure would like to get some more of that. And I can tell you that defensive move in our state did help put a hold on some of those bills coming in last year. But it didn't stop them permanently. And instead, what we're seeing this year, we're one of those states where our legislators really push for choice in education. They've done it at the K-12 level, and they've done it. They're looking to doing it now in adult ed. So we may well. So what we're seeing is this push for more funding for adult ed, but having these different options. May not be my number one choice for how they would resolve that situation, but if it means that that learners are getting served and that there's some more money coming toward our public system, it could be a win-win. One little side note I can say is that it's amazing what an organization with a paid lobbyist can do to raise awareness about adult ed. I really think they've done a great job of getting awareness for the need in our state. And so in some ways we're riding those coattails to say, yeah, we agree. And this system needs a lot of support. So
that's something that's kind of news to me. And when Sara brought it up prior to the podcast, it rattled me, because I've been thinking, advocacy, it is a heavy lift, it's just constantly reaching out and saying, hey, we're here. Don't forget about us. We're still here. I know kids are cute, but our adults need you too. And then when she mentioned that, it could be a matter of competing for funds, like directly competing for funds, like that kind of put me on alert and made me think, wow, like this is why advocacy is important, because at any moment, it could turn from raising awareness to competing for those funds.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to compete for them. I will.
One thing that we say in our state is that we always see Laurie being up in the front line, fighting for adult education, fighting for the funding and everything. And we are always cheering her from the back seats, and we always say LKJ, LKJ, LKJ.
Oh, I love that.
Are there t-shirts? Like, you should get t-shirts.
Put it on
and then
t-shirt.
ship one to me. I'll pay shipping. I want one too.
I love that you're saying that, Sara, but the reality is that it's a team effort in our state, isn't it? We've had Sara as our fellow this last year. She's done an incredible job.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, Erin, I was so struck by and humbled by what you said in the opening about what it meant to hear me talk about being this sort of introvert who it's not easy for me to reach out to a legislator for the first time. I'm not that outgoing by nature. But I think when it's true relationship building, when you have colleagues like Sara and teammates like we do on our awareness committee, and we're all thinking and strategizing, and we're out there on behalf of someone else, it sort of helps me, be a little more outgoing. But it also helps me to focus on those relationships. Like, yes, we're fighting for the funding, but it's been a lot of just getting to know people, getting to know the education person in the governor's office and making sure she knows who we are and what adult ed is, and getting to know our legislators and supporting our colleagues across the state and getting to know their elected officials even just enough to say, hey, thanks for the funding you do give us. And look at all the great work that happens. And, we'd love to have you come visit our program. Advocacy can be really big. Sometimes when it's this big push because you're fighting or pushing back against someone who wants your funding. But it's also important to have those smaller things like the 3 clicks you do while warming up your lunch, or just making sure you're having relational visits with the elected officials that are in your area so they know you're there and they know what the funding they already give you is doing for learners and for the community.
The community of, I almost said advocators, that's not a word, of advocates, I have found to be really invigorating. Just as you said, working with other people on this common goal, it's so rewarding, and I love it. Sara and I love it. That's why we have the Advocast. Join us.
Laurie, I'm curious to know, what's an advocacy success story that you've had?
Oh, that's such a great question. I've been thinking about that and thinking, there's a part of me that won't feel totally successful until adult has way too much money, and can do everything it needs to. But there are successes, and we have to celebrate the little successes, right? So whether it's that success last year in our state of sort of staving off this private company, so that this year there's a big conversation in our state happening about adult ed and how do we get the funding we need to support adult learners. That's a win. That people are aware of us in a way they've never been before. I also, I know our system hasn't seen a COVID relief bill from the federal level. But I do feel like we've had successes on getting pots of money to help our learners. Some of those came through relationships with our host institutions, right? So we're lucky enough to be part of a community college that has leveraged some of those emergency relief dollars that higher ed got to serve adult learners who are students in our college. That was a fantastic win. And that really comes out of having our college understand us deeply and understand our learners deeply. So not all advocacy is about the legislature or the Congress, right? Sometimes it's just about your colleagues knowing what you do. And then we've had some luck with local county and state COVID dollars coming for some specific purposes. I would love it I'd love them to write a check to adult ed and say, do what you think you must. But it doesn't always work that way. We have been able, though, to leverage it for some specific projects to try and incentivize enrollment and persistence in our program. So all of those feel like wins, right? Every time you get a new project funded, or you get a new person who's out there advocating on your behalf because they understand you now. Every one of those is a win.
That's wonderful. So, Laurie, I have no doubt that you have resonated with our listeners, just like you resonate with Sara and I. And you've got a bunch of fans out there who are probably wondering, Laurie, I want to hear more. I want to, keep up to date on what you're doing. How can people contact you or find you?
Oh, I would love it if folks wanted to reach out and contact me. I'm easy to find. I'm at Pima Community College. I can certainly tell you my email, and you could send it out with this. It's lkierstead@pima.edu. So LKIERSTEAD. Email me anytime. You can find me on the Pima website. You can find me through the COE board as the workforce chair as well. And my hope is that folks will, just as you said at the beginning, Erin, I'm so heartened by what you said, see themselves and see, okay, maybe there's a role for me in this. Maybe it doesn't look exactly like Sara, the fellow, or Erin, the fellow, and the amazing podcast launchers, along with this, obviously, Jeff. But hopefully they'll find what they can do. Maybe they'll join the awareness committee on their state association, or maybe they'll just, for the first time, pick up their phone and do those 3 clicks. I just hope folks will each say, what's the thing I feel like I can do to get started in this?
Yeah. Laurie, are you on any social media?
I am. You can find me as Laurie K. Joseph on Twitter. That's probably the best one to find me on. But I'm on
Perfect.
I'm on Facebook as well and Instagram.
Great. Thank you so much.
We'll tag you in this in the post when this goes live, so everyone can click on it and follow you. And beware, you'll probably have a bunch of emails coming your way from me because I wrote it down.
Great.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners out there?
Yeah, I would say the only other thing that maybe we haven't touched on today that I think everyone who works in the field of adult ed can do is really work to elevate student voice. I know you're going to be hearing from Ana in a little bit, and it's our learners that really bring it home for folks. If they don't quite understand what adult ed is or who we serve, it's those student stories. It's a learner saying, this is how adult ed changed me and helped me get on the path toward my future. That's what changes people's minds. The statistics are helpful. Mm-hmm. The data is helpful to understand the vastness of the need, but it's the learner stories that bring it home and that really make people sit up and pay attention. And so make sure in your program that you're collecting those student stories, that you're identifying learners who are willing to share them and get them out there, whether you get them out on social media, whether you get it in writing and email it out to an elected official, whatever you want to do, but get those stories out there because that's what changes hearts and minds.
Right on, Laurie. Right on. Thank you so much. Yes, student success stories are very important.
Laurie, thank you so much for stopping in and not just talking about funding, but you really connected why advocacy matters. And like, I feel this energy to like go out there and reach out.
Thank you, Laurie.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the invite. And thank you for all you're doing with the Advocast. You're really making a difference. So I just feel honored to have been here. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back to speak with Ana Chavarin.
You're listening to Advocast, the adult education podcast, sponsored by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. And now, here are your hosts, Erin Vobornik and Sara Haghighi.
Welcome back. My name is Sara, and I'm with my co-host, Erin, and you've been listening to the Adult Ed Advocast. We are here today with Ana. Ana Chavarin is an immigrant, single mom, and a former GED student. That's how I know her, because she studied in the program that I'm working in. But Ana is an amazing woman. She's very inspiring. She's been doing a lot of amazing things, and recently she graduated from college. So I want to give the floor to her. Hi, Ana. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here. I am more than happy than talking to you and to your audience.
Thank you so much. Why don't you tell us about yourself and the amazing work that you're doing?
Sure. Just tell me, where do you want me to start?
Okay, start from the beginning. How did you get involved with adult education? And then tell us more, all the good things that I don't want to spill.
Sure. I got involved in adult education back in 2011. I have always wanted to go back to school, but I couldn't have that opportunity until 2011. So I had the chance to do it, and I just grabbed it and went and registered for classes, and that's where my journey started. I was taking classes, and then I heard about a student council. I got involved in student life and learned to work in team and to advocate for education. and then I took one of those ambassador trainings and became an ambassador myself. And all these things were happening at the same time while I was still getting classes and getting to train to be an ambassador. So it was an amazing journey. I got my GD in 2013, and then I started to explore my way into Pima College. So
And
I
you
went.
recently graduated, right? Did you
Yeah,
graduate from?
I graduated from Pima College in 2018. So
Good. That's
it
great.
took me a little bit longer
That's
because
amazing.
I was a part-time student, so it took me almost 5 years to get my associate degree.
Mhm.
Then in 2018, I started at U of A, and I just graduated U of A in 2000 last year, 2021.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. What did you study?
Clinical psychology.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Beautiful. And you're a community organizer as well, right? Tell us where you work at.
Yes, I became a community organizer in 2015. Um,
Wonderful.
yeah, it was through the work that I was doing with adult ed and advocacy that I got familiar with the organization that I work for now, and it was almost like an extension of what I was doing.
Mhm.
I was already passionate about advocating for issues that affect our families, and this organization just seems to be like the perfect fit for what I wanted to do. So I've been working with them for the last 7, 8 years.
That is so cool. I love how you said that, you were just kind of drawn to advocacy and that it's something that's really important to you. And one thing that stuck out to me about your story, you said that you got involved with student government
Mhm.
at Pima Community College. And I know from experience talking to some adult learners, that can be kind of a scary thing, kind of going into student government and getting involved in advocacy.
Mhm.
So what inspired you to take that step?
Well, I have always thought that if I wanted to make a change, I need to be right there at the table with everyone where the decisions are happening. And if you're not on the table, you're the menu. So I thought I better be at the table. And I want to be there, and I want to be the voice that speak out from the student perspective. What happens when tuition is raised? What happened with the books that are so expensive? What happened when instructors are not prepared enough or are not um, friendly sometimes to students? I had wonderful instructors, but I have others that it was so difficult to work with them. So when we are adults and we are parents and we have um, the life of an adult, which is like working, paying bills, raising family, all of that. And on top of that, you go to school and then you find that the instructor is not well prepared or doesn't like to work with the students. It makes it extra harder. Also, when you find out that tuition is increasing and therefore your scholarship or your financial aid or whatever is not going to be enough, and you're going to have to get money that you would use for your family to put into education, that those things are causing struggles in families. So because I've been there and done that and know what it means and how it feels to be in that position, I wanted to be part of the government to, in a sense, be the voice for when these decisions are made. I could say, no, this is a no go. We cannot raise the tuition, or we cannot do this, or we need to do that. Finding those ways to help the students. And then that was my inspiration to be there, understanding the struggles of adult learners and wanting to be the voice and making sure that the things that were decided were on their favor.
That's amazing. I love how you transferred all the knowledge that you gained from student ambassador training that you had when you were in adult ed programs to the part that you continue to go to credit side of the house and U of A and all of those things, and you started fighting for your rights moving forward too. And even after when you graduated from adult ed program, that is amazing and wonderful. And I know that even now you're helping us with all the advocacy and all the meetings that we go to, and you help us fight for adult ed programs here in Arizona. So I just want to ask you to maybe tell us a success story. Tell us about one of the advocacy stories that you had here when you went on a visit that you felt that, oh, that was a very successful meeting, or that was a very good experience.
I have many. I don't know. I think that one of those stories could be some of the trips to Washington, D.C., and advocating for the reauthorization of the WIOA, and telling my story to different congressmen and senators that really like make an impact. But also at a local level, going to Phoenix and visiting in the Capitol. Um, and even like bringing it more local to Tucson with elected officials in Tucson. Every year that we visited the city council or the board of supervisors, so they could continue to support our buildings, the maintenance of the buildings and different programs, and inviting them to see the students and see the successes. I think there's so many stories. I couldn't just choose one. There are many stories. But I think one of the most precious stories that I remember is having now Mayor Regina Romero coming to our group of ambassadors and sitting with us and listening to our needs of why we needed bus stops with lighting and shade in that specific center nearby El Rio, and having those conversations and hearing from her, and how she came from that background, also from adult education, because her parents also went through something similar. So those connections, I think there's so many stories that I can really pick one.
Amazing. Those are amazing
is.
stories. Thank you so much.
I think every state is, every listener from different states is saying, we need an Ana. You really are just a phenomenal spokesperson for the ambassador training too. The fact that you're passionate about this and you're experienced, it's phenomenal. So Sara,
Before we go there, I just wanted to share something. Ana was a lifesaver for me when I was selected to be Arizona Safe in 2021. I was new. I had just started my role, and I know that I needed help. And Ana was like, Sara, I'm going to give you full availability. Whatever meeting that you want to go to, if I can, I'll make it. And I'll be there. I'll help you with all the visits. She has way more experience than I do. And she helped me. She was amazing. Thank you so much for all your help during that time that I was getting on board.
Absolutely. See, I wanted to say something about what you just said, Erin, about states needing an Ana. I'm pretty sure there are plenty of students like myself there, but I'm going to tell you this in advance. It doesn't happen alone. The fact that I've been this successful, it's because of the instructors that have supported me all this time, the people, the coordinators from the ambassador program, from student life, all the training in the willingness they had to invest their time in my development and me taking that opportunity. So it is this is a combination. When you have the right instructors with the right heart to help develop the students, this is what happened. So, for the instructors out there who are listening to us right now, please invest in those students that have the potential and that have the passion. They worth their time. And I'm telling you, if you invest in them, you are going to get that investment in return like 10 times bigger or maybe 100 times bigger. Because we, as an adult learners, we just want someone to believe in us, someone to listen and to say, yes, I believe you and I know you can do it. And when we find that one instructor, that one coordinator, that one person in a student life saying, yes, I believe in you, you can do it, we have no limit. We go for it. But there's got to be someone that says, I believe you, I believe in your potential, and I want to invest in you. So please, please, please invest in your students. I'm telling you, please do it.
Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps.
I was getting misty. I was looking at you, Sarah. I was like, please don't let me be the only person here who's not going to be able to hold it together. That is that is an amazing message, Ana, and that's what people, that's what the field needs to hear. Not just legislators and stakeholders need to hear the student perspective, but teachers, administrators, staff, we need that reminder. This is why we do it.
And I cannot be thankful enough to adult education and to all my family there, because as I said many times in my speeches, it just didn't change my life, it changed my whole family. Like, I'm telling you, my full generation. Like, I am the first one in my family ever to get a GD, that one ever get an associate's degree, and now a bachelor's degree. But then my son, who is my firstborn, he already graduated from nurse school, and he's being a nurse working at a big hospital here in Tucson, Tucson Medical Center. And he's good. He got a career. He went to school. And then my daughter right now, she is going to graduate from Pima this May in graphic design and already looking transferring to U of A. And my son, my third son, is already at U of A. He's in his second year. So my younger son is at high school. So what I'm trying to say with this is because I went through adult education and they saw me getting my GED, I told them, you need to get me a high school diploma, because if I got mine, you need to get me yours. And all of them are doing it except Alan, that he's still on the way. And then I started going to Pima and I got my associates and I set the bar and I said, look, now I have an associate. You need to get one of these. You're not allowed to get less than this. And they're doing it. My son did it. And now I got my bachelor's and I set the bar higher. I said, now you guys need to get a bachelor's.
Keeping up with mom.
Exactly, right? And I said, and you know what, guys? I want you to reach higher. If I got a bachelor's, you got to get a master or a PhD, because you need to reach higher than what I'm doing right now. So it all started with adult education and giving that example to my children. And I know that after my children, there will be no kids in my family who don't get education. who doesn't finish high school. And if I see my grandkids being lazy, I'm gonna say, "Hey, if grandma did it, you know." So this changed our generations. It changed my life. It changed my children's life, and it's gonna change my generation. Illiteracy ends here.
That is our motto, actually, Ana. Yes, you're so inspiring. Your story is very inspiring. And that's what we believe in as educators, especially educators in adult education field. The adult education transforms lives. You
It does.
educate one person, but you touch the whole generation. That's
It does.
exactly true.
It does, absolutely. And I have always recognized the love of my instructors. Um, they went above and beyond. They were not just teaching a subject, but they were trying to connect, trying to understand my life, trying to understand my challenges, and even with the language. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. English is my second language. And I can remember how many times I was crying in teachers' Lisa class because I couldn't understand fractions. Because it was keeping up with English and keeping up with math. I had to speak two languages at the same time. So knowing that my instructor Lisa was there and that I could come with her to repeat over and over and over the problem until I really got it and find different ways, and she was amazing understanding the way I learn and teaching based on the way I learn, not the way she wanted to teach, but she was the kind of people that she would sit down and say, okay, let me see the way you learn so I can teach you the way you learn, not the way I teach. And those little actions made the whole difference. I could have given up and say, no, school is not for me, it's too hard, I'm done. But she was there, going that extra step, giving that extra push to make it happen. So that's why I said I could have not done it alone. I did it with all the instructors who were there, helping me, supporting me, and with other staff from student life and the whole group. And I call them my adult family because seriously, they are part of my life. They are my family.
That's amazing. So, Ana, I'm blown away by your story. And when we were talking about podcast guests, Sara said, we have to get Ana on. We have to get Ana on. And she reached out to you, and I'm so glad that you said yes and you showed up, because then I saw an email from COABE that said our keynote speaker for the student part of the conference is Ana Chavarin. And I said, oh, how perfect, we get to meet her before she goes up on the big stage.
Right.
So I encourage anybody and everybody who's blown away by Ana's story to encourage your students to sign up for that conference and to listen to her too, because just like all of us need to hear this, and I think your message is really powerful for adult education students as well. So I'd love for you to just maybe leave our listeners with just one last thought here. If there's anything that you feel like I just want people to know.
Yes, I would say to the students, please don't give up and reach out to your instructors. They are willing to do more for you. Don't be shy. Don't give up. Just talk to them and find ways that you can work it. Trust them. They are there, and when you trust them, they do wonders.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Ana. If our listeners want to reach out to you, do you have any social media handle that we can just give to them so you can
I
get
do have I am on Facebook, and I think it's my full name, Ana Patricia Chavarin. So I will be happy to get messengers or anything they wanna say. I have always been open to listen and to help anyone. So I'm reachable. Just shoot me a message.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ana. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to just kind of watch you and see all of the amazing stuff that you do.
Hi, thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. Thank you for allowing me this time to share with you guys, and thank you for everything you do. Thank you for being our instructors. Thank you for helping us to change our lives, and you guys are doing an amazing job. You don't know the impact that you cause in our lives.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Advocast, the Adult Education Podcast. Your hosts have been Erin, Vobornik, and Sara Haghighi. This podcast is sponsored by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. And I'm your producer, Dr. Abramowitz. You can listen to this episode on COAD's YouTube channel or at www.coad.org.